In the world of small business, every day feels like a whirlwind. Owners are constantly balancing tasks, struggling to find time for what matters most. But in this busy season, relief arrives. Introducing the Autumn Agency's Small Business Division. Imagine a team that not only designs websites and masters SEO, but also provides essential business tools and strategies. With the Autumn Agency, owners gain access to expert business consultants who offer personalized strategies and tools to optimize operations. From marketing plans to financial insights, our consultants empower you to make informed decisions that drive growth. Digital marketing, social media, branding, e-commerce, every aspect of your business is perfected. Visit us today at theautumnagency.co and let us be your autumn.
With us not having as much control as most of the population thinks we may, we don't have that control of what comes and what doesn't. You know, there are recruitment efforts out there. There's groups that I know the city's worked with before that are retail recruitment. Mm-hmm. That's really not something that a city or municipality does. We don't go out and shop for retail development. We have things.
Welcome to What's Up Crossville, your go-to podcast for all the happenings in our quaint Tennessee town. Whether you've been here for generations or have just moved to enjoy our slower, friendlier pace of life, this is the place to connect with the heart and soul of Crossville. Here, we dive deep into the facts, share true stories, and get to know our neighbors a little bit better. Each episode aims to inform, inspire, and entertain, steering clear of the negative noise and controversies often found outside in the world today. This is Melissa Ellis, and I'm here to ask, what's up, Crossville?
So welcome to What's Up Crossville. Our guest today, Kevin Dean, who is a city planner for the city of Crossville.
First off, thank you for inviting me on here. I think the podcast itself is a wonderful idea, and I was excited to be a participant in it.
Thank you.
Generally, most people don't understand what city planning is.
I don't.
It's one of those kind of catch-all positions. I spend a lot of my time working with private property owners, developers, who want to do something with their property, and a lot of times they don't know how. They know what they want to do, and they don't know how to get there. Just to go back, just a little brief story, just because I'm your first and I'm killing time on here.
Hey, that's fine.
I went to a seminar several years ago on risk management for the city, and part of that seminar involved he was a person that was an expert in customer service, and I thought that was a very strange person to have at a risk management, which is also known as the please don't sue us part of the city or any company really.
Right.
And a happy customer is less likely to be angry at you.
Right.
And they're less likely to sue you.
Yep.
So I decided to go to his class. And the funny thing was he asked a question in that class. He said, how many people in here have customers or citizens, because most of the people in there were government entities, that are more angry when they leave your office than when they walk in? Well, there was a couple of us that raised our hands. And there was a young lady who sat on the other side of the room. He asked her, he says, well, ma'am, what do you do? And she said, well, I'm the property assessor. And he goes, well, you're obviously the most hated person in this room. And he looked at me and says, what do you do? I said, well, I'm the city planner. And he said, never mind, you're the most hated person in this room. Because so many times people associate the city planner with hardline rules, forcing someone to do something that they can't normally do with their property. And that's not something that I try to do. And ever since I went to that class, I decided I wanted to work on a path to yes. Actually, I read a book called that at one point in time that assisted with it as well. But when somebody comes in and they say, this is what I want to do, a lot of times it's someone who may have inherited property from their grandparents that have passed away. They decided now they want to subdivide it, or they want to build rental homes or apartments or duplexes or sell it for commercial property, right, depending upon where it's located. And they'll say, this is what I want to do. Well, most of the times when you look at it, you're like, yeah, you can't really do that. It could be infrastructure constraints with not enough water, not enough road access, whatever. But instead of just looking at them and tell them a hard line no, I like to approach it with, how can we get to where you want to be And it's the best for the city, it's best for the community, and it's the best for you.
Awesome. That's a good way to
So
go.
that's kind of the approach I take. And in the city planning role with that, it's not just working with the developers local. It could be the large-scale developers looking at a big box store.
Like Buc-ee's.
Exactly. Exactly like Buc-ee's. That's one of our prime examples of something that was a major bonus to the city and community
Yes.
when it came in.
It absolutely was.
But we work with getting to yes. And I do the same thing when I approach other departments in the city. I work closely with the codes enforcement department, usually with building permits, reviews and stuff. A lot of times people want to do an addition or build a deck on their house. Well, they may have a setback issue. They may have a utility line that's running in their backyard they didn't know about. So I'm the person that reviews that to see if it's going to impact or overstep some of our setbacks or easement. And then I try and work with the property owner and the other departments of the city to try and get them to where they can still do the addition, but not impact whatever this utility or easement or setback is.
I like your approach. You're trying to find a path to yes.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm not going to try starting to stir the pot or anything, but what you see a lot online, because that's where a lot of us get our information now. We go to these Facebook groups or, whatever, get into Messenger and talk to our friends. And it's typically the city said no. The city said no to this. The city doesn't want this in. Anything from, I've seen TJ Maxx, Publix, Aldi's. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of good to know from what I'm hearing that you guys aren't sitting there saying no. I mean, I'm sure you guys want as much to come in as possible. It's good for Crossville.
We do. Especially when you're looking at jobs, obviously.
Yeah.
The more jobs that people in your community have, the better high-end paying jobs, the more money they spend. And what it comes down to in a community like ours, most cities, even in Tennessee, a large percentage of their revenue from the city is based off of property tax. We're not that way. We have one of the cheapest and lowest property taxes in the state of Tennessee.
Which is why we've had such an influx of newcomers to
That's
the area.
correct. But at the same time that we have that lower property tax, our budget has to come from somewhere.
Right.
And the way that it's been coming right now is sales tax. I mean, you're talking probably, and I hate to throw numbers out there, I may be wrong, but it's somewhere 65, 75% of our budget probably comes from sales tax more than property tax. So when you see growth, you need higher paying jobs. You need more places for them people to spend their higher earned income. So to me, it's ridiculous when you see people on social media saying the city won't let this company come in or they won't let this business open here because it's competition. Well, competition drives growth.
Yes, it does.
And we want growth because we need the sales tax revenue.
Right. No, I agree with you 100%. But like we've already mentioned, that social media, it's like throwing gasoline on a dumpster fire sometimes.
Oh, it can be.
And
absolutely.
You're getting a whole bunch of dirty smells coming from that dumpster fire. And some of it is just simply not true. In fact, I don't even know to possibly say most of it's not true. What would you say?
I would hate to quantify an actual amount, but I can tell you that when my sister's ex-boyfriend's college roommate talked to a cashier at a grocery store in another town and said, hey, they're opening a place in Crossville, there's a high probability that's not true.
Right.
Because most of the time, the higher up corporations aren't going to have a conversation with that cashier about where they're expanding to.
Right.
It's kind of funny.
So how would you tell people to determine facts from rumors on these speculations that you see on social media or from anybody?
I'm in a unique situation to where I am probably one of the first points of contact for any business or company that's coming to move in. Now, I mean, that's excluding like any kind of industrial recruitment because most of that is handled through our Chamber of Commerce. And we work real tightly with them as well on industrial stuff. So don't let me say that's all them, not us. But
Right.
We do work together with the county and the Chamber on bigger projects like that. But like you mentioned Buc-ee's. We talked to the Buc-ee's people probably 2.5 to 3 years before anybody else in town ever knew they were coming. There are times that we have to sign NDAs and some stuff like that on projects. But a lot of times, the bigger retail outlets and stuff like that, they'll give us all the information that they need in their due diligence reports without telling us who it is. Like when we first met with Buc-ee's, they came in, we sat around a big conference table, and they're like, yeah, it's a gas station. We're looking to build, and I'm looking around the room going, why are we meeting for someone to build a gas station?
And I remember seeing those rumors probably a year, 2 years after you guys had already spoken. And I'm thinking, what's the big deal about it? I was kind of like you. What's the big deal about a gas station? My husband actually said something. He goes, I hope it's a Buc-ee's. He's from Texas.
Oh, yeah.
So, he was like, I hope it's a Buc-ee's.
Well, we had some friends that actually had been traveling. I never heard of Buc-ee's.
I hadn't either.
But we had some friends that were traveling in Texas probably about a year before they came and spoke to us. And they're like, you ain't going to believe this thing. And, of course, I'm going to make fun of her. I'm not going to name her name. But she's like, we stopped at this place called Busey's.
Busey's?
And her husband goes, it's Buc-ee's. It's a beaver.
I want to know who this was. You can't drop her name?
I'm not.
Oh, man.
But anyway, she was telling us about like 120 gas pumps and this huge store and all. I'm like, what? Well, that's funny because that's what the first thing that these people we were talking to, that's what they mentioned. They're like, yeah, we're going to have about 120 gas pumps. And all of our jaws just kind of hit the floor at that point in time.
Where are you going to put that?
And we worked hardly with them to find that location.
Yeah.
There was actually 2 or 3 places they were looking to build it,
Really?
and that's the one they settled on, is where it is. But it was 120. Well, as soon as they left, we all got upstairs, started Googling, looking at Google Maps, trying to find massive gas stations, and we found Buc-ee's. And we're like, I bet that's going to be a Buc-ee's. So we were tickled to death to have that, the first one in Tennessee here.
That's really neat, too, because I know, like, after Sevierville built one, and everyone's excited about that. And my son's girlfriend lives in Memphis, and apparently they're building one there now, too, she said. So
it's funny. They mentioned to us, they don't like to be in major towns. They prefer to be in these smaller towns that are kind of on the outskirts or in between larger towns, like for us, between Nashville and Knoxville.
Yeah.
And when they chose here, they said, we like to see economic growth boom around us.
Yes.
So that's what we're seeing right now.
And Crossville could use that.
Absolutely.
I mean,
more sales tax dollars.
Absolutely. So there's often a curiosity about how businesses choose their locations. Can you explain what factors influence these decisions and how much is determined by the city versus the businesses themselves?
Majority of that is the businesses themselves. Without the city of Crossville having zoning, we don't have a whole lot of say-so into where someone or something goes or builds.
So we don't have zoning.
We don't have zoning at all.
Explain zoning, because I feel like an idiot, but there might be some idiots listening as well. So
we are probably, let me just say this first, we're probably one of the largest cities in Tennessee that doesn't have zoning. Zoning is basically hard guidelines enforced by law on what can go where.
Okay.
And they're usually classified in things like R1, R2, R3. Those are residential styles. You got C1, C2, C3 that are commercial. I's that are then like industrial. Then there's agricultural and some other, offshoots.
So could I get a residential area and a commercial area?
Yes, you can.
Well, that's right, because right around the corner from Grinder House, that was used as a residential.
That's correct.
Place.
We since we don't have zoning, we do have something called land use planning, and it's kind of like, I want to classify it maybe as, I won't even say soft zoning, but it's a very soft level of zoning because there's no teeth involved. We look at the overall potential growth areas inside of the area called our urban growth boundary, which is an area that we could see ourselves annexing and growing to over the next 30 years, because all of our planning is based on 30-year. We always look 30 years out. When we look at land inside that urban growth boundary, we determine this will probably be residential, this will probably be commercial, this could be potential industrial, but there's no hard line saying this shall be residential, this shall be commercial. So they do look at us sometimes, but we have to have that level to be able to plan our infrastructure where we might need wider roads, more water lines, more sewer lines. So we have to have something. So we use land use planning instead of zoning. With zoning, if you have an R1 and you want to build a dollar store there, then you would have to come to the city and say, I want this rezoned. And that takes public hearings at the Zoning Board of Appeals, then the Planning Commission, and then the council can get involved. And we don't have that here. We do have things like residential restrictions or covenances that are associated with your deed. And those are binding, but they're not enforceable by a government entity.
Okay.
They are civil issues. So if you have restrictions in your neighborhood that says you can't run a business in this neighborhood, but then you open a hair salon in your basement, your neighbors can then sue you to stop doing that. But you can call the city all day, and we get calls. And I get one of the most number one calls I get is, what's the zoning on this property? I'm like, we don't have zoning. And the same thing happened to that. They're like, well, it's against my residential covenants. Then it's a civil issue, and you have to hire an attorney and sue. I don't want to sue. I want you to fix it. Well, we can't. 'Cause we don't enforce residential covenants and restrictions.
And that's pretty cool. I teach voice lessons one day a week out of my studio room at my house. And as far as I know, no one's complained about it, but I'm not in a very restrictive neighborhood either.
Chances are, and the funny thing about restrictions and covenants is a lot of times if there are violations to them, they become null and void if no one has enforced them over a certain period of time. So you may have restrictions that says you can't run a business in here, or you can't even re-subdivide your property into a smaller or different lot. But if 3 of your neighbors has and no one said anything, then you're pretty much free to do it too.
Okay, well, that's pretty
Now,
interesting.
don't quote me on that. Always contact your attorney. Have your attorney review that. Don't listen to Kevin.
So, and this is always a touchy, and we'd already discussed this before we started, and I'm already aware that you are going to shut me down on a lot of poking and prodding of trying to find out what's coming in and what's going. So, but I'm going to ask anyway, so you can tell me I can't answer that. What are some exciting developments or projects that you are currently working on that you can share with our listeners?
Honestly, I would love to be able to sit here and tell you today that certain grocery stores are going to open, but they're not.
Well, you know what? I don't like to grocery shop anyway, so I'm not too hurt about that. Anything cool? Shopping, clothes?
I can't really name drop on anything yet.
Okay.
I can tell you.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I don't like name droppers.
I'll say this. Since we alluded to Buc-ee's or made comments about Buc-ee's and the economic growth that's around Buc-ee's, there is currently a large development going in across the road from Buc-ee's. It's called Genesis Plaza.
Okay.
That's where the new standalone Starbucks is being constructed right now.
Okay. I knew about the Starbucks. My son works for Starbucks.
There's an AutoZone that's going in. There's also been a site plan already approved for a 3-unit mini mall, little strip mall type thing. That'll be there on that corner. The city itself is actually in a project right now to build a road through that intersection there where the Speedway is.
Yes.
There'll be a road that'll go from that intersection there at that traffic light
that light is
to the back of that property.
Fantastic.
To expand and open up that area.
Oh my gosh.
Now that developer, he's working hard. He's got a lot of names he's dropped.
Okay, but you're tight-lipped.
We don't have anything submitted to us yet.
Okay.
Okay. I don't like to name drop until I get an official submission to us.
And I think that's smart.
Even if they don't name it, even if they don't make it sound like an NDA, I don't think it's my place to be the person to be their PR guy and say, hey, look what's coming.
Right.
You know what? I don't need to be the guy that breaks the news first to be able to, this is coming soon. You know, that's not me and that's not my place working for the city. I can tell you today, I had a due diligence report request this morning from a quick service, which is like fast food. I know it's not a big sit-down restaurant that is looking at the Genesis Plaza area.
But I like food.
And it's one we do not have here.
Oh.
And I'm not going to name drop it, but I was excited to see it.
So I'm sitting here, my little hamster wheel in my brain is like, oh, what could it be? Oh my gosh.
I may have
some ideas. I may have some ideas, but yeah, we won't break it until you know.
Yeah,
and of course,
This 4th of July, get ready to rock with the Member Berries, your ultimate 80s and 90s pop tribute band. Join us at Centennial Park starting at 6 p.m. for an unforgettable evening filled with your favorite hits from the past. Member Tears for Fears? Member the Cranberries? The Member Berries do, and they will have you dancing and singing along to every beat. Don't miss out on this electrifying performance before the fireworks light up the sky. Bring your friends, family, and your best dance moves for a night of nostalgia and fun. Celebrate Independence Day with the Member Berries at Centennial Park. Be there at 6 p.m. sharp, and the music will take you back in time. Brought to you by the City of Crossville. See you there.
we're a growing city, and I know a lot of people don't like that.
They don't. There's a push against it, and there's a push for it.
I like progress, and I know some people wouldn't agree with that being progress. I really get excited when I see new things come in, because to me that tells me that we are creating jobs, hopefully creating jobs that will help sustain living standards. Because I mean, even though we are one of the most affordable places in Tennessee to live, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of our jobs are helping us get from, we're not making ends meet in a lot of families.
It's true. Yeah. And, one of the things that I see complained about a lot of times on social media, and I'd just like to touch on this since you mentioned it. excuse me, growth brings growth.
Yeah.
You know, and even when we have these little coffee houses, like a Starbucks opening, well, we already got 2 of those. Yeah, but they're in a grocery
But
store.
they
This is
stay
a
busy.
standalone.
Yeah.
This is still growth. They complain about dollar stores popping up everywhere.
But we keep going to them. Every time
They're
there's a new one,
always busy.
they make fun of them. And I'm like,
They
I'm glad they're
create-
there.
They create jobs and they
Yes.
make sales tax for us.
Yes.
Plus, these other entities, like you mentioned Publix, people have mentioned Aldi's,
Yeah.
they've mentioned Target. I've seen people request the Golden Corral and Olive Garden. But they look at communities that are growing. And even if it's a dollar store going in, that's still growth.
It is.
And these coffee little places, I know Bloom has now opened up 2 or 3 different locations, and
one
they're
is at
local.
one is at the end of my street, and I'm not going to say I keep them in business,
I'm not sure how you're not broke.
but I don't know
you.
how I'm not broke. My husband would love to just tie me up and say no more coffee. I will. And my husband roasts coffee out of.
And we're getting a couple more too.
Coffee?
Scooters Coffee has. I don't know if you're familiar with the
Yes,
Scooters
I'm
brand.
familiar with Scooters.
They've had a site plan already approved. They're at the
Okay.
corner of Elmore Lane and 127.
Okay.
They're across from Walgreens and Goodwill.
Yes.
And we have another submission for one called 1776 Coffee.
Is that a big entity or is that local?
I don't know them.
Okay.
The developer itself, I think, is out of Utah.
I've never
the guy
heard
that
of
I
them.
spoke with. So,
Okay.
and I may be wrong on his location, but I talked to a lot of different people.
Coffee is good. I don't think that you can ever have too many coffee businesses. I
No,
haven't even been
absolutely.
to Common Grounds yet.
My wife and daughter have been several times.
I've heard
Love
so
going there.
many great
Yeah.
things about them. And like I said, I'm a big supporter of Bloom. Before they moved to the end of my street, I was going to the one out Homestead all the time. And I mean, so then I was spending a lot of money on their coffee and gas. So now if I don't have a car, because if we have car trouble, I will just walk down. We were walking down there during the snow.
Oh, wow.
We were
Yeah.
hey guys, I need some coffee. Let's walk down to Bloom and see if they're open.
Well, I'm not to plug businesses, but I mean, that on my way to work, Scooters will be on a way that's a slight detour for me
There you go.
that I can swing by and pick up that instead of Dunkin' all the time.
And that's convenient.
Yeah.
And, some people may need to still use Dunkin'.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe they just prefer Dunkin'. And I think,
My daughter does, I'll tell you. I'm not plugging Dunkin', but she prefers that over any other Starbucks or any of the other ones. Seattle's best.
blows my
She's had
mind.
several.
I know a lot of teenagers that prefer Dunkin' over Starbucks. And I thought Starbucks was the thing, but that may have just stopped with the millennials, maybe. I don't know. So we are getting a Scooters and we're getting a 1776, was it?
That's correct.
Coffee.
Far too many times. If I could give you a list of the potentials that were coming in, it would blow your mind.
Oh,
I
don't
mean,
ever tell me.
Since you mentioned the word Publix, and
gosh.
that's been a hot topic for a lot of the social media groups
For years.
For years, and a lot of them have some root in truth. I can tell you, probably in the last 5 to 7 years at least, we've been approached by no less than probably close to 10 different developers that name drop Publix right off the bat.
Oh, boy.
Like, oh, we're looking to build you a Publix. And I think they do it just to stir up the level of interest from the local area. To date, all of those have fallen through.
Okay.
And it's for various reasons. It's not anything I can go into real detail. A lot of it could
But
be
it's not
current
because you guys are
demographics. It's
saying
not-
no.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. Kevin would like to have a Publix.
I drive to Cookville to get Publix from time to time, especially if I'm over there. I'm picking up one of their subs and bringing it home
So
for
on
later.
a personal level, you are absolutely not saying no go for these things. On
That's
a personal,
correct.
not on a professional. But you guys aren't saying no anyway.
We never say no.
So how does the community feedback influence city planner decisions?
That's a hard question to answer.
Because we've already discussed that
We
some people
don't
don't want us to
have-
grow and some people do.
With us not having as much control as most of the population thinks we may, we don't have that control of what comes and what doesn't.
Okay.
There are recruitment efforts out there. There's groups that I know the city's worked with before that are retail recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
That's really not something that a city or municipality does. We don't go out and shop for retail development. We have things available. We try and work with them once they look at us. One of the main reasons, though, is a company's not going to come somewhere that they're not going to thrive.
Right.
And they do their own due diligence.
They have to. They have people on staff to do that job.
They have companies they hire
Right.
that are called due diligence report firms. And those people are the ones that contact us. And we bend over backwards trying to help them. You know, we do everything that's possible to us. One of the last potential entity that was coming in, we're looking for address and driveway information within radiuses of potential sites. That's something that we were trying to help generate for them. Okay. That's above and beyond what we normally do and what other cities could even do. Okay. You know, we were going above and beyond to try and help that growth happen. And something happened, and honestly, I don't know what happened on this last one. I've not heard.
That wasn't on your end?
It wasn't on our end. We finally heard from the developer that said they pulled out.
Okay.
It went to the board and they voted no. So I can't tell you why or the reasoning behind it.
But you guys were encouraging the growth.
We were doing everything we could.
All right. Well, and that's good for everyone to know. Like, you know, I said when I started this podcast, it was more because there's a lot of muddy information out there, and that's the best way I can call it. And I feel like with muddy information, we get a lot of negativity. So the whole point that I wanted with this podcast, because I see podcasts in Cookeville and Knoxville, and they promote their city, their local businesses, and things that are, you know, deciding factors in their growth. And I wanted it to inform and inspire and entertain. So even though you're not really entertaining me today with a song and dance, I will give you props for informing us today. Now, if you have a song on your heart,
I'm not. It's been a while since I've sang.
Not today. Okay, okay. Do you want to inspire anybody?
No.
I'm curious though. Are there any initiatives in place to support local entrepreneurs and small businesses looking to get started?
There's not. There's not a lot from available, at least from the city aspect.
But we do encourage it.
Absolutely encourage it, and there are institutions in place that can help and facilitate that. You've got Roan State's, the business incubator.
Yeah.
That you got programs through TCAT. Then you've got a lot of mentor programs in town from a couple different entities that do that, and some city staff has volunteered to be mentors to upcoming people.
Well, that's interesting to know.
Now, I've had a couple conversations with some property owners, and this is years and years ago. And I'm not going to say that my conversations had any influence on it, but at one point in time, our downtown area was kind of dead.
I remember that.
And it's booming now. There's little shops in all these buildings. There was a lot of empty spaces.
Hey, I remember when the Palace was scary.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where we're interviewing at right now. Like, yes. I would have never thought in high school that I would be in the green room right now interviewing somebody on a podcast at the Palace Theater.
That was a city project.
It was. And that's exciting.
Years ago. My father voted for that one.
Oh, that's right. Your dad was.
Dad was on council.
Yes, he was.
I had a conversation with 2 or 3 of the property owners in the downtown area at that time, and I asked them. I said, "Well, what are you?" And this was not in my job scope. This is not part of the planner.
Right.
This was just me trying to help our community. I said, "What are y'all charging for rent?" Mm-hmm. You know, because I said the first 18 months of a new business is a lot of times the go no go deadline, and I made the suggestion of, why don't you try and knock your rent down for the first 18 months, and if it's thriving, then you can bump it up and have a tiered schedule.
Awesome.
And I know a couple of people that actually tried to do that. I don't know if that helped.
I was going to say,
with
did
the downtown.
Work?
I don't know. I didn't follow back up on it. Maybe I should have.
I know that we don't have a lot of empty spaces.
I know, but so I'll take credit for it.
Yeah, Kevin Dean did that for you guys.
About one of the only things we look at from the planning aspect is we look at parking situations.
Yeah.
I know we have some parking shortages in our downtown area.
Of course. But I forget about the ones that are over behind Taylor and Fortes. I forget about them all the time.
What's funny is we define our downtown district from Webb to West.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? So we try and look at the overall picture to see what kind of improvements we can have in different areas, for that.
Right.
And it's also Webb to West, and then your Lantana to Neacham. That's classified as our downtown district.
That makes sense.
That's where all the new sidewalk project that's going on right now. That I wanted to brag on. The sidewalk project, the downtown revitalization sidewalk project has begun.
Okay.
It'll be done in May 2025, fingers crossed.
Yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed. I know that you don't have any information. You might have information on this. What are they doing on Lantana right now? They're like fixing up sidewalks on the corners. And I'm trying to figure that out.
That's a state project.
But you don't know what it is?
I do. It's, okay. There's an initiative nationwide that's come down from the federal government for ADA compliance. the American Diabetes. I've been working on
If
that
you
one.
have diabetes, we've got your
The
sidewalks.
American Disability Act. I
Yes.
apologize.
No, you're good.
And that's part of what one of the projects for our downtown is. All the intersections and sidewalks will be brought up to ADA compliance and have the audible ped signals added at 2 or 3 of our intersections
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's great.
with the decorative street lights and pretty smooth sidewalk.
So what challenges does Crossville face in terms of growth and in development, and how is the city addressing these?
With growth, there's growing pains. And if you drive anywhere, anytime, you'll see traffic. I tell people that are friends of mine in Nashville, and I'm complaining about traffic, and they laugh at me, and I'm like, it's relative. It has nothing to do with your size. It has nothing to do with you have 500,000 people living there.
No.
We're a city of a little over 12,000 population, but our daytime population is somewhere between 30 to 40,000 on average. That's the number of people that are inside the city of Crossville from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
I may be a little off on that number, but
I'm holding you to it.
that's a ballpark. There is traffic concern. And anywhere you drive right now, you do see T-Dot road projects. And I've seen lots of people complaining about them. But you also, the same ones complaining about the T-Dot road project are the ones complaining about the traffic problems to begin with.
Yep.
This is how you fix it.
Right. And you got to be patient.
Yeah, there's growing pains that happens with it. And unfortunately, our crystal ball doesn't work any better than yours. So we try and look at that far out, 20 to 30 year plan. We try to address certain concerns, especially when it comes to infrastructure. The city of Crossville does. We do handle the roads, water, and sewer as far as the infrastructure goes within our corporate city limits. And then our water and sewer goes a little bit outside.
Right.
Actually, the water goes a lot outside.
A lot of bit outside.
Yeah, all of Catoosa area. Actually, I think we sell water to close to 2/3 of the county, I think, buys their water from the city of Crossville.
Okay.
I may be off on that number. Don't hold me to that one either.
I'm not going to, I'm absolutely holding you to it. Never mind.
We try and look at that long range planning to see that. And that's where, like I said, the crystal ball is only as good as the crystal ball, which if you ever tried to use one, I'm not a psychic, but it's a little bit more than a shot in the dark.
Right.
It's educated guesses that we have to look at on growth. And we can amend those growth plans based off of where we see growth actually happening and occurring, and we can make changes to them to try and better insulate the city from an issue down the road.
Okay.
And that's what we try and do. But like I said, with growth comes growing pains, and sometimes it takes time.
With like everything, there needs to be a level of progress, or it just things just stay stagnant. And I love Crossville, and I want to see it grow, and I want to see it progress. But I definitely don't want to see it stagnant.
No, stagnant is might as well be going backwards.
Right.
I mean, you've got to move forward. With the cost of things, you have to grow to match that cost. Just seeing some of the challenges that some of the local developers have been having with the material cost.
Yeah.
Something that used to cost $2 is now costing $10 or $12 a foot.
I hadn't even thought about
to install. And part of that's driving up your housing cost. And you're talking about some of the growth challenges we have with the population increasing and moving here. We do have an affordable housing shortage in our area right now. And that's not an easy solution to make, and it's not something that the city itself or the county can even get involved with. The only government entity that truly handles housing is the housing authority.
Right.
And they have a couple of different programs they're using for more affordable housing, not just your what's classified as your normal project type housing. They have these other housing developments that they were doing. I think it had some sweat equity that was involved in it, kind of like Habitat for Humanity has done. But they were thriving at one time, and they've become a little stagnant at this time.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's due to federal funding or there's not a need for that level of housing at this time. But they were nice homes they were building.
Yeah.
Very nice homes. Habitat for Humanities, they're planning expansions left and right now to handle some of the housing issues. I met with their director. I talked to her on the phone probably at least 3 or 4 times a year on stuff that they've got going on.
And
so,
I know people are struggling, like, if they can't find a home to buy, they're wanting to rent, and rent is crazy high too. It's really scary for a lot of families right now.
It is. And just how the change in the housing market, I can tell you just from my own personal experience. My wife and I got married in 2003. And we bought a house that same year. It was about a 1,700 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We paid $91,000 for it. And
how much is it going for now?
Well, we sold that house, I think 2019, right before the big housing explosion. I think we sold it for about a $139,000.
Yeah.
If I had held on, talking about my crystal ball not working.
Right.
If I had been able to hold on to that house it would have sold for probably over 3
Absolutely.
today, or I could have just rented it, because some of the rent prices I've seen for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,700 square foot house is close to $2,000 a month.
Yes, it is.
My mortgage was $600,
Yeah.
and I complained about that mortgage then.
Yeah. And I've complained about smaller mortgages too, and I'm like, but these renters are paying $2,000 now, and some of the homes, when I look at like the MLS and just all this all these home listings, I look at these houses that are smaller than the one I'm living in, and they're asking for something. I'm like, I could never cough that up just to live in a smaller home at this point. It is mind-boggling how it's gotten to this.
It is, and most of those places I see, they're asking for that first and last month rent.
Uh-huh.
They need $6,000 up front.
Who has that?
And that's not something that your average person, especially out working for minimum wage, can pay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a need for affordable housing. And
Which means there's a need for jobs.
sadly, that's got to come from more of the private sector.
It is.
And that's, the developers have to look at that when they do it. And we've had a couple developers that are earmarking more of their single-family residential subdivisions that's for that.
Yeah.
It's not really, I won't say low-income housing, but it's affordable housing.
But yeah, they're trying to make it, accessible to people who can't afford a $300,000 home or a $2,000.
A lot of those are going rents, and they're
Yeah.
they're charging cheaper rent for it.
Yes, and I think that's incredible, and I like to hear that. I like to hear when the private sector, anybody steps up and says, "Hey, you know what? This is a passion of mine. This is on my heart. People are struggling, and I have the means to make it better for them, and I'm going to do that." And I think that that's extremely important. I love that. But looking forward, and now you guys say that you have like a 30-year, not a crystal ball, because your crystal ball stinks. We know this now. Can we ask, how do you guys see the next 30 years or even 5-10 years here?
It's hard. We have to look at it from, well, there's a couple of different ways you really have to look at it. Some of them is what I call the Field of Dreams approach. Build it and they will come. We look at it in that way. There's some projects that we can do with infrastructure mostly, and say, well, if there's areas in the city or near the city that don't have the proper infrastructure for growth. That's some of the places we can look at and say, well, we help get some utilities or water and sewer, or annex that property. We don't really do annexations that much anymore, but something like that. How can we help facilitate this to grow? Some of that aspect we use in that 30-year, it's called our capital improvements plan. It's a public document. Anybody can request a copy. I think it's probably online on the city's website.
Okay.
And it involves everything from infrastructure. It also includes things like when we have to buy a new fire truck. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into planning 30 years, because a fire truck's $1 million project. You know what I mean?
Oh, I bet.
Or $500,000, I think, whatever they cost. Luckily, I'm not in that department.
Yeah, that's not on
But,
there. Yeah.
we have to look at everything in that 30-year plan.
Right.
When we do need to build a new fire hall, when the growth is in a certain area, you've got to provide certain levels of fire protection. So you might have to add a new fire hall to that area, or new police officers to cover areas, or planning for garbage pickup. Because if you're in the city, you get free garbage pickup if you're a single-family resident.
Yeah. I don't get it free.
Yeah, you don't live in the city.
I don't live in the city. Funny story. We met with Rob Harrison a while back at a Cumberland County Playhouse Arts thing, and we explained to him that we don't get to vote on city things. We don't get to vote for a city council or anything, and apparently we are just like half a road away from that cutoff. And he told us to email him and everything. We did. And we're like, hey, this is our address. Can you check? He's like, yeah, there's not much I can do for you.
Annexation's a weird thing.
Yeah.
Cities used to could annex whenever they wanted, wherever they wanted.
Yeah.
As long as it was within an urban growth boundary that I mentioned. But the state law changed several years ago and pretty much has eliminated what I classify as hostile annexation.
Yeah.
We can only do annexation now by request.
Okay.
And certain criteria have to be met for that.
Right.
Has to be adjacent to it or within a certain distance. And
I think that's what he was explaining. And of course, I feel stupid, but he explained it to me, and I'm like, it sounds like we don't meet the the qualifications. So, yeah.
And then, talking about that, and this is a little off topic, but this is something I kind of
No, it's fine. We can go off topic.
There's a lot of people out there, maybe it's people that's going to be listening to this podcast, that don't really understand the differences between city, county, and state.
I think that is accurate.
Because social media is not a great place to judge that, but or to get your information from in general. But I see a lot of comments on there. Why is the city looking to spend $40 million on an indoor recreation facility when my road needs paved?
I was actually wanting to talk about the but we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I get the question.
A lot of times when they list their road, that's in the county.
Yeah.
Or it's a state route. And they don't understand that the city doesn't have anything to do with paving county, and the county doesn't have anything to do with the indoor recreation facility.
This is true.
That's something that the city is undertaking.
Right.
We repainted a water tank out in Homestead several years ago, and I saw the social media just blew up with, it was like $500,000 to repaint this water tank. They're like, there was guys on there that I'd pay it for $30,000. Well, the paint costs $400,000 that you have to use on those things.
It's kind of like the CCHS jets issue. They're like, well, I'll paint it for cheaper than that. I'm like, they kind of need a special paint. They need.
Yeah. Do you know the city actually is the one that leases that jet, by the way?
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah. We have the lease with the Air Force.
Oh, we're today years old when we learned that. That's interesting.
Yeah. The city actually holds the lease for it because they wouldn't lease it to a school. They had to do it to a municipality.
I did not know that. That's really interesting.
So we have to renew the lease every once in a while with them. But they were complaining about why didn't we pave our street instead of repainting a water tank.
Right.
And people don't understand that a city actually is two entirely different entities. Mm-hmm. You have a utility department, and then you have the general fund.
Yeah.
And those monies shall never intertwine. So anything you pay for your water or your sewer bill or anything else, none of that money can be used for streets or police or fire. The same thing you pay for property tax or sales tax can't be used to run your water lines or sewer lines. And it's not just that. We're required by law to do that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And the county has a challenge. They don't have the same resources and funding that the city does.
They don't. And it's a massive county.
And there's however many hundreds of 1,000 miles plus. I'm assuming over 1,000 miles in the city or in the county.
Yes.
Of roads. And maintaining that is different than maintaining the roads you see in the state or in the city limits.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's different money, different entities, and they have to go about it different ways.
Well, we've got a few more minutes left, and I just wanted to ask, and like I said, I never wanted to be controversial on this show, and this is our first episode, so I'm definitely not going to be controversial, but I definitely want to clear the air. What can you tell me about the rec center that's coming in? Because that's like a big, everyone either hates it or loves it, or if they're like me, I'm just like, we'll see what happens.
That's an interesting topic because honestly, the rec center itself is not something that's really coming across my desk yet. That's more in the political arena. Once it gets past the political arena,
but it's going to go on your desk.
The planning department, engineering, utilities, all of those guys, we all start getting involved.
Right.
We've assisted the council in some of the information to gather about the potential properties they were looking at more than one at one time, but that's about the extent. Council has recently voted to start moving forward with it. That was in the news a little while ago. So I'm expecting to see stuff start coming across my desk for my aspect of it.
Yeah.
But as a city employee, it's not on my radar yet.
Right.
I know that sounds funny because
no, it makes perfect sense. It sounds like, we're going to ask you, would this property work? Okay, we'll come back to you when we're ready to actually come back to you.
Yeah, and right now I think it is still in the design phase with the contractor that's online and the architect firm. So they're still in that planning and designing phase.
Yeah.
That just really does not involve us yet, me and the engineering department.
Well, when it does, we'll absolutely be asking a lot more questions about it.
We'll know more once the design is done and they start doing site plan side of it. That's when I'll get involved more so than anything else. I can speak on it as a personal.
And I'd like to hear your. I think
let me
great.
take off the planner hat and just put on citizen Kevin's hat.
Let's hear it.
And I personally think it's a good thing for our community. Mm-hmm. It does give more options. Now, I'll be honest with you. My daughter right now is about to turn 15. How much would we use the Y?
As a family.
Right. Probably not as much as you will have younger kids.
Yes, I have little ones.
And I've seen a lot of the complaints about the monthly cost of the Y. People really need to look into that.
How much? Has it absolutely been quoted yet?
No,
or is this all
it's
assumptions?
I think they're basing it off of what Putnam County's YMCA, who would be the YMCA that would be running ours.
Okay.
I think they're basing it off of it, and I've heard different numbers. And once again, I'm not sure. It's like $80-$90 a month for a family pass or a 2 or 3 pass. I can't tell you.
But you know how expensive it is for
But-
my family to do anything once a month?
Yeah.
It's about
But
like $80-$90, and you have a pass.
If you use the programs that the Y offers, it's worth every penny.
I bet.
Now, for me, once again, I work out at one of the local gyms. It's $10 a month. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not going to go pay $80 a month to work out, but I can pay and do the same workout that I do at another gym for 10.
Right.
Why would I? You know,
Right.
And that one's real close to my house.
Okay.
So, so to me, that's not something that I would participate in. But if I had younger kids that needed swim lessons, if I had younger kids that they do all kinds of activities.
Yes.
They do trips to the zoo. They do.
Yes.
If you want to go work out and you don't have daycare, they've got daycare to provide for your younger children while you as an adult are working out.
And I know that what I've run into as a mom, I've been pregnant, nearly full term 4 times. And when I lived in Knoxville, I was able to keep that weight off. I was able to stay healthy because I could leave my kids in a childcare setting in that gym.
Mm-hmm.
So I could work out for 2 hours doing cardio, doing some weight training, and then actually sitting in a stinking sauna for like even 5-10 minutes to say, okay, I'm about to be a mom again. I got a shower that day. This was really important to me. And then I moved here to Crossville, and I'm not going to knock Crossville, but I am going to say that when I first moved back here, there was nothing. Now, I know we had one wellness center, but it was a hit or miss if that child care provider was available that day because people would call out. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Some people are sick, but they didn't have backup. They just didn't have the resources to keep that going. And so in the end, I found myself not going to the gym after baby number 3 because, I'll just say, if I go to Planet Fitness, there is no child care. If I go to work out anytime, there is no child care. I remember one time seeing someone say, hey, we have child care for 2 and up. At that point, that baby weight has been on for a long time. There isn't child care for a lot of us to get just a small break from, and I love my children, but I feel like I'm a better mom when I get breaks to do that.
Absolutely.
And I can take care of my physical health and take care of even my mental health.
Even the programs that they're offering those children,
those
instead of
kids
just sitting on their babysitting
watching
them,
TV, yeah.
those are fantastic educational things that can be
Absolutely.
done. And they open and broaden their spectrum. And they help promote health and well-being and exercise and stuff in the youth, too.
And we want that for
Absolutely.
our kids.
A
That's
healthier
interesting.
community is a good community.
It is.
And to me, and I've seen a lot of people complain about the pricing, but a lot of the Ys that you look at, and I can't speak specifically for Putnam County or Putnam YMCA
Right.
or what this one's going to be handled at, but a lot of them have scholarship programs.
Yeah.
A lot of them have what's called scaling or sliding payment plans based on your income. One of the sayings that a lot of the Ys is no one is turned away.
Yeah.
So, to me, the price shouldn't be an issue, for someone to be against it.
Right.
Because they go above and beyond, and they do work toward trying to allow everyone to participate.
They offer jobs.
Yes, absolutely.
There's jobs in that.
Yeah. And it'll be a nice boon to our downtown, a nice little boost to our downtown.
And I've heard that it's fun to stay at the YMCA. I had to do it.
Absolutely.
I had to do it. Kevin, it was a real pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you for being my first guest.
One more thing.
I want to hear whatever you have to say.
There's one more thing, and I know it's one of your questions, and I'm calling you out on it. You didn't ask me about it.
Well, I said I wasn't going to ask everything.
I know.
Go ahead.
But to me, this is an important one, is how can people in the community be involved, and how can they stay on top of what's true and what's not?
That is a very important question, and that is my bad for not asking
Yeah, that one needs to be said. And the best way to be involved is to be involved. We have meetings at the city council. They meet the first Tuesday of every month as a work session. I think it starts at 5 or 6.
And that's open to the public.
It's open to the public. Council meeting is the following second Tuesday of the month. Planning Commission is the third Thursday of the month. And if you can't attend, you can listen live stream over the city's website, or you can go back and listen to archive audio. We're currently not streaming video for them, but they are audio live and archived.
Okay.
And that's Planning Commission and City Councils. So that is one way. The easiest way for people to find out what is officially coming is the Planning Commission agenda. It's all listed on the city's website. That's www.crossvilletn.gov. You can go on there and find the Planning Commission, find their agendas. If it's listed on the agenda, that means a site plan has been submitted and is being reviewed by Planning Commission.
And if we see anybody say anything, like in any of the groups, we could say, that's not on the agenda yet.
That's right.
We squash those rumors.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And again, I think that we'll be probably having you back several times because Crossville's constantly growing and, chatter is constantly chattering. And we just want to, set the record straight. We don't want to get people too excited about something or too upset about something. And we want them to know that the city is not telling people to get lost.
Absolutely.
We want it to grow. And you guys aren't wanting to grow to get rid of your small town feel. We're wanting it to grow because we want people to have jobs. We want growth so they can afford, groceries, living, just, and maybe even a vacation amongst all that.
Absolutely.
And that's what a lot of families are missing out on today. Thank you again for being on What's Up Crossville. We will have you back again, Kevin. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Not just because of mom and dad. It's for my love of hometown, Crossville, Tennessee.
Hey there, small business owners. Ever feel like your online presence needs a serious upgrade? Introducing the Autumn Agency, your go-to for professional website design. We understand the importance of a strong online presence beyond just social media. At the Autumn Agency, we take the time to understand your business, define your brand, and build a website tailored to your needs and budget. Yes, we even offer flexible payment plans. Relax and let us be your autumn, bringing peace and growth to your business this season. Visit us today at theautumnagency.co and transform your online presence. Let us be your autumn. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of What's Up Crossville. We want to give a shout out to the amazing sponsors for their support. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review, and don't forget to share this episode with a friend. For more information about What's Up Crossville, visit us at whatsupcrossville.com. There, you can find upcoming episodes, resources mentioned in the episode, and even recommend future guests. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the individual speakers and do not represent the policy or positions of this show, its related entities, advertisers, or the Southern Spitfire brand. While our discussions may cover a variety of topics, the content of What's Up Crossville is intended to inform, inspire, and entertain. It should not be used as a substitute for professional advice. For medical, financial, legal, or other professional advice, we encourage our listeners to seek the expertise of a licensed professional who can provide personalized guidance. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode of What's Up Crossville.